On March 30th, 2020, UT officially announced the switch to online classes due to the COVID-19 pandemic, forcing over 24,000 professors and faculty to work remotely. More than a year since, professors have continued to rely on Canvas and Zoom, adapting their content and teaching style to the virtual format.
Live streaming to 800 students is terrifying. It's so scary. It's so scary. And before our first class, I just was in an absolute panic, like wandering around my house, like playing some pump up music. And my husband was like, "Oh, are you playing your pump up playlist?" And I was like, "Don't talk to me." I'm so nervous.
A lot of us are having to spend way more time preparing for courses and having not just like a plan B, but like a plan C and a plan D. Like, what if my internet drops? What if my TA's internet drops? We're planning a lot more and it's more exhausting.
Honestly, I think one of the biggest challenges is I have 2 kids. When they're homesick, I'm in my kitchen and they have no idea that I'm working.
Now it's like, wake up, walk into my garage to work out, walk back out of my garage. Okay, good, I'm already at work. Write some emails, shower eventually, write some more emails, teach, right? So it has more of a scattered feeling than the day was much more organized previously.
I like to be fairly interactive. I'm walking around the classroom the whole time. I'm not stationary. I'm moving toward students. I'm pulling students up for examples. And so all of a sudden being confined to this box right here has been a significant challenge for my teaching style.
Having a slickly designed presentation is not optional for me. Like, I want things that I do and I present to be beautiful for the students because they're having to stare at the screen.
I invented something that I call the super PowerPoint, that instead of having 15 slides that I would use as the basis for an in-person lecture, 200 slides, 220 slides, each slide with a small amount of material that paces you through step by step.
Usually for me, it's about an hour and a half of prep for an hour in the classroom. With teaching back online, I was in the 3 to 5 hour space again before a lecture. Like, it was a lot of prep work.
Instead of taking 45 minutes or an hour to make PowerPoint for a class, I was taking about a day and a half.
I think I have been a little bit more sensitive to reaching out when it seems like people are falling through the cracks.
I do not blame students for leaving their screens off at all. Like, I think that that's 100% within their right. It is super difficult for me, though, to engage with a bunch of blank faces.
So you have to do a lot more intentional communication of, here are things about me that I like, find funny, don't like, find annoying, right? You have to show a little bit more of your humanity because that screen does confine our humanity to just what we curate in this room.
I realized that humor was a much more powerful tool in the teaching arsenal than I'd ever really understood before. Humor is something that is in very short supply when you're in a crisis.
I do not anticipate that my students are going to be able to perform the same way they would be able to perform if there was not a pandemic happening. And in the same way, you probably should not expect your professors to perform as if there was not a pandemic happening. You know, allowing each other that grace during this time is just really necessary.
I think one of the silver linings has been, an opening for us to say, okay, when we're moving in the future, what parts of education do we really believe in?
The technology to invite people from Shanghai into the classroom, from Mumbai into the classroom, has always existed. We just needed to create the social norm of doing it. And now that we do have that social norm of doing it, I think that we'll be able to see some really interesting research collaborations, teaching collaborations, guest speakers, et cetera, et cetera.
One thing that I do love about the virtual classroom, though, is the chat box. I'm actually trying to figure out how to integrate something like that into the in-person classroom when we move back in person. I get such valuable interaction, I think, from the class that way that I would love to maintain that.
I love that I get to bring my dogs to work with me every day. And I love meeting y'all's dogs. I know it's creepy, but like when you choose to turn your camera on, it's fun to see the rooms that you're living in, the decoration that you guys are choosing. So there is a sense of intimacy that I get to have with you all.
It takes a lot of humility too, to realize I've been doing this for 25 years and suddenly I have to learn everything all over again from the ground up. Realizing that it is okay to have to learn everything from the beginning. It is okay to mess up. It is okay to struggle with technology. It's okay to try things and experiment and learn from trial and error that some things didn't work. So let's try this other thing. When I had to rethink the entire foundations of my teaching, it became an opportunity to do things better than I had ever really dared to do them before.